So we'll be listening to the research work of Dr. Mo Tabib on the effect of relaxation practices on labor pain and epidural use. Dr. Mo Tabib is a midwifery lecturer at Robert Gordon University in Scotland, and she has worked across a wide range of midwifery settings, including clinically, working in the community, and as an independent midwife. She's a researcher, and her work focuses on how educational intervention influence the well-being of expectant parents as well as midwives, both current and future midwives. Dr. Mo is a mixed method researcher, and our work has been recognized both nationally and internationally. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Mo Tabib. Over to you, Mo.
Thank you, Adetoro. Hello, everyone from all over the world. It's lovely to have you, and thank you for your interest in the study that I'm presenting today. So the title of the study, as you can see, is Effect of Relaxation Practices on Labor Pain and Epidural Use. Before I go further, also, Happy International Day of Midwife to everybody. So back to our presentation. This is not just my work. I've had some other people in the research team, including Professor Tracy Humphrey from Flinders University in Australia, and Dr. Forbes McCoy from Robert Gordon University, and Katrina is a psychologist, by the way. Next, please. So before I start presenting, I would like you to reflect on your own experiences, whether you're a midwife, a student midwife, or any other role you may have that links with the midwifery and childbirth. My question for you is that how often do you see women using techniques such as breathing, visualization, or other relaxation techniques during labor? And please feel free to add your responses to the chat box. I won't look at them at the moment, just to keep on time, but at the end we will go over them. And the next question is that what influences whether women in your care or women that you observe use pharmaceutical or non-pharmaceutical methods? So kind of a moment of pondering and reflecting. Next, please. So background and the rationale for the study, relaxation practices have been shown through the literature that can reduce perceived labor pain. There are some smaller size quantitative studies and some qualitative studies also showing that. And showing that they can enhance the feeling of coping with the labor pain and the sense of control. And that goes with the psychophysiological stress model, which means everything is linked together. Basically, the physical body, our psyche, and our social context, they're all linked together and they impact on each other. So considering that, rationally, we expect that these sort of practices should reduce epidural use. But when it comes to the randomized controlled trials, like the large-size randomized controlled trials or systematic reviews, the evidence remains inconclusive. So what we really don't know is that do women actually engage in these practices when they are offered education on them? How perceive their effectiveness and how such education may impact their decisions regarding choosing an epidural. Next, please. So to address this gap, the aim of a study was to understand how women feel relaxation practices can influence their pain and their decision on use of epidural after attending an antenatal relaxation class that from now on I'm going to call it ARC. Next, please. So in the reference list, there is a whole article about ARC, but in summary, ARC was an established initiative in a Scottish NHS Health Board. It was a single 3-hour class facilitated by midwives who'd been trained in relaxation practices. It was free of charge for participants. According to another study that they used the intervention that had the same length, and it was midwife-led, and they concluded that the cost per person was £5 per participant for NHS, so it's quite low cost. And what was included in the class was the same thing that I explained at the beginning, psychophysiological processes, how emotions and what happens in labor and the context of labor, social context of labor, all together kind of can interact with each other. Then they practice a range of relaxation techniques. They also had some positive birth stories from previous participants of ARC. And at the end, they were given some hands-on and audios for home practice. Next, please. Setting was a specialist maternity hospital within an NHS health board in Scotland with approximately 5,000 births per year. And this setting was chosen because it offered ARC. Next, please. So the method for this study was an exploratory sequential mixed method, which is very mouthful, but basically means we started with qualitative study to understand what's happening, basically asking women questions through interviews. And out of those qualitative data, we generated some hypotheses, some research questions. And then we went on to assess these hypotheses and questions using a quantitative approach in a larger sample. Next, please. So the benefit of mixed method design is that you can combine qualitative depth and quantitative breadth. So basically giving you more comprehensive understanding and also actionable findings from a study. The quantitative interviews basically were included in phase 1 that involved 17 women that they were interviewed, and we asked them what their experiences of using relaxation techniques during labor and how they coped and how that may have impacted their decision about epidural use. This phase 2, the second phase, was a longitudinal cohort study. 91 women took part in the study, and they completed surveys at pre-class, 2 weeks post-class, and 4 to 8 weeks post-birth. And what we measured was whether they wanted to use epidural in pregnancy or their intention of using epidural, both pre-class and post-class, and also whether they had actually used epidural. And that was asked after giving birth. We also asked them if they had used relaxation practice in labor, and we asked them how that impacted their pain management. Next, please. So let's start with phase 1, the qualitative study. Our research question was this: what are the experiences of childbearing women in using relaxation techniques to manage labor pain and their decisions regarding epidural use? Next, please. So we use purposive sampling, which means you basically we selected participants so that the reason was that to make sure we had a range of women. We didn't want to hear just voice of a part of, a small sample of people. It was a small sample, but we wanted to basically have maximum variety, people from different racial backgrounds, educational backgrounds. So that was the aim. The eligibility criteria included having an age of over 16, which is a legal age in Scotland, able to speak English. They should have attended ARC, and they should have had midwifery-led care to just make sure we had a sample that experienced labor, really. Interviews were recorded and transcribed verbatim. We used reflexive thematic analysis to analyze the data. We had a response rate of 26% almost. 17 women took part. and they took part in one-to-one semi-structured face-to-face or telephone interviews. The sample had age between 26 and 41. They were from a range of ethnic groups and educational backgrounds. And in terms of parity, 3 women were multiparous and the rest were all primiparous women. Next, please. So what did we find? These women told us that they did use relaxation for labor pain, and that helped them to cope better with labor. That was their perception. And as a result, they experienced a sense of satisfaction and pride in their own abilities. But also in theme 2, a space for relaxation, they told us there were some factors that could impact or modify their use and effectiveness of these learned techniques. One was physical surroundings. The other one was clinical context, what was happening actually during labor. And the third one was the role of birth attendants. Next, please. And I have some quotes in the next slide that would explain these themes and sub-themes a bit better. The breathing was really, really good, you know. I just got through it with breathing and relaxing. I managed to get to 6 centimeters on my own, and that was stated proudly. I was on no gas and air, no pain relief, just paracetamol at home. I was quite happy. For the second thing, I used it at home more because in hospital was a bit harder because of just the environment you're in. They thought forceps was a better option, so I had the epidural. So that shows the clinical context had an impact on the use of epidural. And Angela compared her first and second experience, highlighting the role of birth attendants or the midwife. My first experience, the midwife said, lie here, do this, do that. Whereas this time was just more, what do you want? Get up, move about. It made me so much more confident. Next slide, please. So again, my question for you, do these themes actually resonate with your experiences or are they different? And please feel free to add your comments in the chat box again. We will get back to them after I finish. Next slide, please. So as a result of our findings in qualitative phase of the study, we generated one hypothesis and 2 research questions. Hypothesis 1 was that there will be a relationship between the time and intended or actual use of epidural for labor. So basically, we expected women to, as a result of attending this ARC, to kind of choose epidural a little bit less. That was our expectation. But we needed to test that to see whether that was the case or not. The research question 1 was, do women attending ARC actually use the ARC techniques in labor? Because coming to a class is one thing, and using the what you learn in that class is something else. And research question 2 was that, do women attending ARC whose labor starts spontaneously stay at home during early labor and seek hospitalization in established labor? And that came up from qualitative data when women said, well, because I could cope better, I didn't need to rush to hospital, I could stay at home. And when I went to hospital, I was well established in labor. So we wanted to actually test that to see if that is also the case in a larger sample. Next, please. So again, for the second phase, this time we used convenience sampling because we needed a larger sample, and inclusion criteria were the same. Response rate was better, almost 38%. 91 women took part. And you can see the sample characteristic in the table. 21 to 41-year-old they were predominantly prima gravidas. They were again from a range of ethnicities, mostly married, and range of educational background and employment status. We can go to the next one. Thank you. So what did we find out? Hypothesis 1 was supported. There was a significant difference between the number of people who intended to use epidural before class and after class. And before class, 50%, over 50% of women had considered using an epidural for their labor pain. After class, that reduced to 25 or 29%. 25 participants or 29%. And actually, when it comes to post-birth, we asked them if they had actually used epidural. 32% had used epidural compared with 50% before, who intended to use epidural before class. So that showed us like there was a significant difference in the intended and actual use of epidural before class, after class, and after birth. Next, please. And this is again a visual presentation of that. You can see the dark purple column is the people who didn't want to use an epidural, and you can see it's actually growing after class, post-class. And comparing post-birth with pre-class, again, you can see it's bigger than pre-class. Next, please. Research question 1, did women use epidural? 100% of women who had experienced labor reported using the relaxation techniques in labor. And with a range of techniques, and the techniques that were used, the most were breathing techniques. Visualization was used by 31% of women, and hypnosis was used by only a minority. Next, please. So of 84 women who returned the post-birth surveys in response to the question on coping with labor at home, 44 or 55% had a spontaneous onset of labor at home. The rest were induced or they had elective cesarean section. The mean time they spent at home in labor was 13.7 hours or median 7.5 hours. Majority of these women arrived at the hospital in established labor with a cervical dilatation of over 4 centimeters, and the mean cervical dilatation was around 5 centimeters when they arrived at the hospital, with 11% arriving at the hospital with a fully dilated cervix, and most of these people were actually prima gravida women, so which I think is important to note that. Next, please. So back to you. What is the rate of epidural in your country or unit or wherever you're practicing? And do women in your setting tend to stay at home during early labor or usually come to the hospital or the birth centers as soon as they feel the contractions are starting? Because that's really important. Actually, there's some really high quality evidence showing that attending hospital in established labor reduces the mortality, morbidity, the costs for the health services, and the health outcomes for women and babies. Next, please. So I think we missed one. Integrated findings, yeah. So when we combine these qualitative and quantitative findings together, we can see the studies suggest that relaxation techniques were widely used, viewed as having a positive influence on women's confidence, their ability to cope with labor pain. Majority, as I said, of those who had spontaneous onset of labor didn't seek early hospitalization, and they arrived, most of them, in established labor at the hospital. Attending ARC was associated with a significant reduction in both intended and actual use of epidural for labor pain. However, the effectiveness may depend on the physical surrounding, the clinical context, what's happening actually clinically, and the behavior and attitude of the birth attendants. Next, please. Back to you. What changes in your birth environment could support relaxation techniques? And how do you think staff behaviors can influence women's coping during labor? I think there's a lot to discuss about this. Next, please. So this study, like any other study, had some strengths, some limitations, and some of them are these. So that was the first exploratory mixed method study. What does that mean? That means that actually the hypotheses and research questions were grounded in women's experiences. They were not generated by researchers. They came from qualitative data. We had a diversity of participants who would enrich the study, and we had a high retention rate. Only 6% of women didn't return the post-birth or post-class surveys. Limitations, the observational design could be a limitation because it can indicate only association between attending ARC and all these findings, not causality. To prove causality, we need more kind of robust studies such as randomized controlled trials. We could have had volunteer bias. Women who have opted to take part in these classes could have been inclined more to these practices. And the study was undertaken in one single site, which would limit the generalizability of that. Next, please. So what do we learn, or what are the implications? Create birth environments that offer quiet, privacy, and emotional support to enable use of relaxation or a sense of relaxation during labor. Prioritize investment in antenatal relaxation education and supportive birth settings. And also train maternity staff in a psychosocial model, which emphasizes continuous emotional support and guidance in using relaxation techniques. And we've done a study actually on midwives. And that study, of course, this is not a place to present that study, but also show the positive impact of providing training for midwives and their practice and the outcomes for women, and also for the midwives themselves. So future research should examine more complex interventions that consider not only just antenatal education, but also influence of the birth environment and the role that birth attendants can play. Next, please. Conclusion, antenatal education on these sort of practices our study showed that could improve women's coping abilities with labor pain, give them a sense of satisfaction and pride in their own abilities, and highlighting the value of including such content in routine antenatal education, because at the moment, at least I know in the UK, that's not a part of routine antenatal education. And effective use of relaxation techniques also that needs to be taken into account. That may depend on other factors such as birth environment, birth attendance, and the clinical routines. Next, please. So if I ask you, what is one takeaway from today that you could actually apply into your day-to-day practice, what would that be? Again, please put your response into the chat box, if that's okay. Next slide. So this study has been published in a peer-reviewed journal, and this is the QR code. If you scan it, that would take you to the full study. Next, please. These are references, and especially reference 11 that can take you through details of ARC if you're interested. And the next slide, please. Thank you so much for your attention. There's this saying that, the attention is the best gift you can give to someone, and you've given that to me. So I'm very grateful for that. And I would welcome any questions you may have. Hopefully I can respond to them. Thank you, Adetoro, for your support, and thank you, Ali.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mo, for the fantastic presentation. And thank you for sharing your experience with what you have done on relaxation technique. I want to thank people that have been using the chat box, to add their comments, to add their input. Thank you, Sedin. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Edith. There's this comment from Ali, and also another comment from Edith, and it was responding to what you talked about in terms of the presentation when women do come into when they are in labor. Do women come in our setting, when they are in established labor or at the early onset of labor? And we can see that it's different, from what Ali shared to what Edith shared. So Ali responded that whilst women are encouraged to stay at home, a lot of them seem to want to come into the hospital, possibly due to the lack of education about how to manage and cope with early labor. But then that is different from the experience of Edith, who talked about women coming in established labor after they have been encouraged to stay at home. I don't know what your thoughts are with regards these situations.
Thank you for the questions. Very interesting and important questions. I need to highlight actually, not only they learned how to use relaxation techniques or practices, we allocated 1 hour of the class to talking about physiology of childbirth and how our emotion and control or lack of control of emotions can actually impact how we feel about labor pain. And I think that had from not I think what comes from qualitative studies suggests that actually that understanding had a very important role in women's coping. It wasn't just the relaxation techniques, it was the understanding actually what's happening in my body right now and how I can be in control of those processes. So I believe, according to obviously the study and my experiences and the research from other people, that providing women with education on physiology of childbirth itself can make a real difference in women understanding their bodies and feeling confident to actually manage or cope with labor at the beginning. And of course, I just want to highlight we're talking about women who have no complications. We don't want women who have complications stay at home and do relaxation techniques. So this is important also to take into account. I hope that has kind of responded to some extent to the question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There is a comment and a question from Afifa. And Afifa said that in Indonesia, to reduce pain during labor, the midwife use a hypnobirthing.
Yeah.
And so they're asking, is it the same, or is hypnobirthing a technique for relaxation?
I would use the term of relaxation as an umbrella term that would include hypnosis, visualization, breathing techniques, movements, some relaxing movements. So hypnobirthing would go under that umbrella. And the reason I'm using relaxation instead of hypnosis is just to take into account the personal preferences of women. And so as you could see in our results, actually, most women use mostly the conscious breathing, and that worked really well for them. That's not to undermine the value of hypnobirthing, but and hypnosis. Those sorts of practices, from what I know, they need more education, longer education, and most health services cannot invest that much in antenatal education. So having a 3 hours, so basically that was what we had, 3 hours, and that's what what midwives providing this service had, and it was important to include something that everybody can go away with something that suited them. So hypnobirthing, I would say, yeah, it's a kind of relaxation. That would be my understanding.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mo. And I don't know, whilst I think we still have time to take maybe one or two quick questions. And thank you, Afifa. Afifa is saying thank you for your answer, Mo. I just want to get your reflection in terms of where do you see, this topic going from here? So in terms of how this topic will evolve, what are your thoughts around, are there challenges, are there opportunities, maybe opportunities for partnership and collaboration, maybe opportunity for multidisciplinary type of working, yeah. So
Thank you
thanks
so
much.
much for a very lovely question you asked me, because that's very relevant to what we're doing right now. So myself and my team have been looking for funding opportunities to conduct larger size studies that also offer more complex educational interventions. So that means including birth practitioners, including the birth environments and practices. And that's kind of something that we have applied for, and we're waiting for responses. Also, currently, actually today, we have the first workshop with a group of research participants. So a team of a multidisciplinary team of AI specialists, myself, a psychologist, we've come together, and we are trying to develop a relaxation digital tool with women. So this afternoon, actually, as we speak, we will have the first workshop with 10 pregnant women to tell us what works for them, so that we can make it more person-centered, more personalized, let's say personalized relaxation techniques that would suit everybody. And also, if we can really bring down the cost, I think health services, especially national health services, are more likely to be on board with interventions like that. And so this is like a short term that is happening, and the long term plans. Hopefully that has answered the question.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I think we have time to take one more question, if anybody has any. So, Iba, is the relaxation technique embedded in the labor care pathways? So, is the
Uh,
relaxation technique embedded in the labor care pathways?
I don't think so personally. If anybody knows the answer to this question, they're welcome to answer. But I don't, from my observations of, I don't think it is embedded in the pathways yet. It's recommended here and there. I think in NICE guidelines occasionally it's recommended that women should feel relaxed, and that the midwives or birth practitioners should provide an environment for relaxation. But we don't have a specific guidance actually how women are supposed to learn these techniques. Where are they offered these techniques? And do birth attendants or birth practitioners also understand this? And can they support women? So these are kind of a part that they're not clear from guidelines. Hopefully, again, that has answered the question. Not fully, but yeah, to some extent.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
Thank you
your
so much.
answer. Thank you so much for that great presentation.